Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's Tech Talk with Plaid on how we can help you transform messy transaction data into clean, personalized insights. We're so excited to have all you here with us today, so let's get started. A few housekeeping items to cover off on. You can submit questions using the Q&A widget at the bottom of your screen. We'll be answering a few questions at the end of today's session. We'll also be sending a recording of today's Tech Talk to you via email after today. And finally, we'd love to connect with you. Visit our website at plaid.com or follow us on Twitter or YouTube. Now, you're probably wondering who I am. I'm Jimmy from our product marketing team. I support a number of Plaid products today, and I focus a lot of my time on working with product and engineering teams to improve product quality, launch new features, as well as address feedback from our developer community. Now I'll pass it over to my colleagues for their introductions. Take away, Royce.
Thank you, Jimmy. Hello, everyone. My name is Royce, and I'm on the product team here at Plaid. Been working on the transactions product for the past 2.5 years. Excited to be here today to chat about all things transactions. I'm gonna pass it over to Richard now.
Hey, everyone. I'm Richard. I manage our transactions engineering team. And likewise, very excited to be here today.
Now that you've met the team, let's kind of set the stage for why we're all here today. I think we all recognize that digital finance is in high demand as consumers are shifting more of their financial and banking needs online. This was especially true during the pandemic as more people had to stay at home. And back in the fall of 2020, Plaid partnered with Harris Poll to survey 2,000 US adults on whether they were using fintech, how, and why. And we found some really encouraging stats, such as 62% of Americans are managing a good portion of their money digitally, and over 80% of Americans are managing most, if not all, of their money without visiting a bank branch. And at the center of that is really financial technology. In fact, excuse me. In fact, 76% of Americans say technology is really making it easier for them to try new financial areas. And this gives developers a really big opportunity to build new tools and services that make it easier for people to manage their finances digitally, whether to send payments, buy cryptocurrencies, or pay down their debt. But in order to really seize on this opportunity, many developers need a detailed understanding of their users' finances. And this is where kind of consumer permission data comes in. Today, millions of Americans are choosing to share their financial data with apps and financial services so they can receive tailored products and recommendations to better manage or grow their money. You probably have the app in mind now that you're building or have used one before that's powered by financial data, but you may not know how everything works, from how to access user permission data to how data insights can be inferred to help your users. And this is where Plaid can help today. In our Tech Talk, we'll help you understand how our transactions product works, the insights you can glean from user permission data, and how to get started in 3 simple steps. But before we dive in, let me give you a quick introduction to Plaid. We're a data network that powers the tools that millions of people rely on to live a healthier financial life. And we work with thousands of companies today, from Betterment, SoFi, to Venmo, several of the Fortune 500, startups, and many of the largest banks. Ultimately, to make it easier for you people to connect your financial accounts to the apps and services that you want to use. And our mission is really to unlock financial freedom for everyone. We work with over 100,000 developers, product managers, and their support teams have gotten started with Plaid today. And 1 in 3 Americans with a US bank account have connected their financial accounts to an app. That's a lot of people that are managing their money digitally today. And finally, on average, we analyze 150 million transactions each day, which means we have a high level of expertise in cleaning and standardizing user permission data. And while today's focus will be on transaction data, I just want to quickly highlight that Plaid offers a variety of products and APIs that can serve many use cases and business needs. We'll cover off on a few of them at the end of today's session, but for now, I'll pass it over to Richard to kind of walk you through the problem we're helping you to solve today.
All right, thank you, Jimmy. So the main problem that we're here to talk about today is that transaction data is inherently messy, and every payment processor, every bank, they all format transactions slightly differently. So here is an example. The same transaction at a Papa John's, say, could be represented in totally different ways at 3 different banks. And of course, the other dimension is that even within a single bank, different merchants will all have different formatting as well. So you have thousands of banks, millions of merchants, and you can really see where this is going and how it becomes a problem pretty fast. So, yes, some banks do actually parse out things like merchants and other metadata, but most do not. And really, even the ones that do, it's pretty spotty in terms of accuracy. So on top of all that, we need to consider different languages, nuances within a language, and different countries. You can see a few examples here where it's really hard to correctly parse out and interpret some of the information in the transaction description without any sort of external knowledge. You need a system that can figure out, for example, that John McDonald here is a name and most likely not a fast food purchase. So we also need to handle entities in other countries, like the Bank of Ireland, and merchants that operate globally, like Netflix. All right, so hopefully I've convinced you all that this is a hard problem. So Royce, could you kick us off with what Plaid can offer to help?
Thank you, Richard, for painting a picture of the messy nature of transactions data. We comb through the complexity when we retrieve the data from the bank and build a product that you can simply access. Our API enables you to access user permission data that is cleansed, parsed, and standardized across 11,000 financial institutions. With Transactions API, you can retrieve up to 24 months of historical transactions data from credit, depository, and loan accounts. From the transactions endpoint, you can also view the current and available balance. On top of that, we will send you a webhook when there is new transactions ready for you to retrieve. One of the many benefits of building on top of Plaid product is that it's easy to integrate. We pride ourselves on being a company that is built by developer for developer. On the institution coverage side, we have a comprehensive list of institutions and support over 11,000 institutions. We also have a robust data parsing and categorization process that we're about to go into a lot more details shortly. With our coverage abroad, you would have access and support to all different languages, all via one system. We do this so you can free up your engineering time and resources in doing the tedious work and focus on building features that is important to you and your customer. All right, if all of these sounds great, and you're wondering how I can get access to user permission data, in 3 simple steps, you can unlock transactions data. First, integrate with Plaid. It takes just a few lines of code to drop our front-end module into your app or digital services. On top of that, once you do that, user will be prompted to connect their bank account. They will then select their bank and enter their banking credential. Once user go through the flow, you can call the transactions get endpoint. You'll be able to retrieve the historical data and get access to new transactions on an ongoing basis. I'm going to pass it back to Richard to check out what happens behind the scene.
Cool. All right. Thanks, Royce. So what really happens under the hood here? Well, once a user has connected their account through our link flow, we will go and pull their data from the bank. And depending on what bank that is, that connection could look very different. So, of course, some banks have their own APIs with their own quirks that we use and integrate with. Some integrate with our Plaid Exchange network and so on. And really, each bank integration is a bit of a special snowflake and requires quite a lot of dedication to build and to maintain. In fact, we have really hundreds of people whose main focus is to keep these connections up and running. So once we get all this data, it goes through a pretty extensive system of cleansing, of standardization, lots of parsing and enrichments before it becomes available to all of you, the developers. So this whole pipeline does run synchronously in some cases, but for the majority of the hundreds of millions of transactions we're processing every day, this is all running async in the background since we're automatically pulling new data for all of the linked accounts. All right, now let's dive a bit into what each of these boxes actually mean. So we start with cleansing the name for a transaction. In this example, you can see that we identify that the merchant is in fact Apple. And we also categorize. So again, looking at the example on the right here, we determined that Apple is an electronics store. Now, both of these may seem fairly straightforward. And in a lot of cases, it kind of is, but there is a huge long tail for both steps. So yes, there's some really popular merchants like Apple, but there's millions and millions of mom and pop shops, small websites, and so on. And we have to be able to recognize all of them. And similarly for categorizing, there's a ton of cases where it's not quite obvious what the right answer is, if there even is a right answer. And we'll come back to that a bit later. So another step in our pipeline is to reconcile the existing transactions we already have in our system for a given item or account and any new data that we get. So transactions do change. They usually start out as pending, and after a couple of days, they will actually post. And in doing so, the amounts, the dates, even the description sometimes could change. So we want to make sure that despite these changes, we're able to match them up, right? Like the old and the new, so that we don't end up with any duplicate or missing transactions. And of course, we parse out any important pieces of information that we can get from the raw text, such as any location information or store number. And lastly, we have a layer of enrichments that we add. So we use the word enrichment to describe any sort of metadata that we as Plaid can provide that was not available in the raw data. So this could be things like inferring additional location information, inferring the payment channel, or deciding on the transaction category. So let's see an illustration of what this all means. Here we start with, again, our example of Papa John's. And this is pretty typical for the raw data that we see from a bank, right? Just a raw text string with a bunch of different pieces of information kind of concatenated together. And so, through all the magic that we apply in this pipeline, we come out on the other side with clean, structured, and really standardized data. You'll notice that we're able to infer the exact location information based on the store location or the store number. And, this is actually a fairly straightforward example of raw data. The Papa John's is pretty clearly there. A lot of times we'll see things like the merchant name getting abbreviated or truncated. We'll have like arbitrary numbers and acronyms that we'll have to parse through and interpret and so on. Next slide, please. So yeah, some examples here. So for the first one, you can see how a very simple system might interpret this as a transaction made with DirecTV and then classify it as a cable bill or something similar. But in actuality, this is a donation. And similar with the second example you see here, if we just apply pretty simple rules, this might be interpreted as a foreign transaction fee. But if we actually incorporate the context of the entire description, it turns out that it's actually a transfer. So to solve for all of these different cases, we have to use a combination of multiple systems. There is a large set of rules and regexes that we manually create to maintain. There's numerous machine learning models to handle things like language processing and classification. And these also have to be tuned, maintained, and retrained. We maintain a large and ever-changing database of merchant information to search against. And of course, we do have to incorporate feedback from our customers about the output of our system back into the system itself. Now, you might be saying that's all well and good, but what can I actually do with all the outputs of all this? And to answer that, I'm going to hand it back off to Royce.
Sweet. Thank you, Richard. Thanks for the comprehensive overview. Now that you have a better understanding of how we process messy data, let's carry off on insights and use case powered by transactions data. First and foremost, we heard from many developers that they use transactions to identify payroll and income. They use our category and specifically the payroll benefits and transfer category in our taxonomy to identify income deposit into the bank account. Oftentimes, customers also look at the name and amount field to verify this information. Other developers really care about merchants' insights and want to be able to reward user for shopping at a specific merchant or at a specific location. Developer can use data fields like name, merchant name, store number, and payment channel to build upon this use case. Others want to get really specific and precise at the location insight. Developers can do so by looking at the location metadata, which has fields like address, city, state, zip code to pinpoint a specific merchant. Next slide, please. More broadly, we've heard many customers use transactions product to identify users' cash flow and spending insight. These insights can be gleaned using the combination of amount, category, authorized date, balance, and account type field. With this info, developers can get a better sense of the user cash flow at a given time of the month and calculate spending insights such as how much has this user spent on grocery or on rent this month. Because transactions also provide update on an ongoing basis, developers use transactions to help monitor the user finance. With webhooks, developers get notified when there is new transaction data. With this info, developer can look for transaction that has large amount and help alert user about abnormal account activity. Given that we also provide up to 24 months of transaction history to use, other developers use transactions to identify recurring pattern or mine insights from transaction history. Now, I'm going to pass it over to Jimmy to highlight a couple of specific use cases.
So two popular use cases which incorporate insights from transaction data are personal and business financial management. For personal financial management, developers are really trying to build a comprehensive picture of a user's finances, which is hard to do when they have accounts across multiple financial institutions and banks. And this is where Plaid can help. By consolidating financial data from multiple sources and categorizing data, we make it easy to use that data and provide insights to those users. And with categorized and enriched data, here are just a few of the things that developers can do. They can encourage users to set a budget and manage their debt. They can monitor cash flow and offer services like a paycheck advance. They could also identify recurring subscriptions like Netflix or Disney Plus to track expenses. And finally, as Royce mentioned, they can reward users for shopping at retail partners. For business financial management, developers and businesses are really trying to simplify accounting processes from bookkeeping to payroll. And Plaid can help by reducing the administrative time and giving users an easy way to connect their financial business accounts to your software or app. And with clean and categorized data, you can offer services that simplify expense management and invoicing, track spend across different categories, or you can enable faster payroll or onboarding for payment setup. Now that you have a good understanding of how everything works, let's cover off on how a few companies are using Plaid for their financial data needs.
All right, thanks, Jimmy. So the first of our customers to highlight here today is Drop. And for Drop, their aim is to create a new type of rewards program that is custom tailored to their users and solves for the needs of millennials. So they use Plaid transactions to better understand spending habits for their users and to provide rewards for specific transactions. And a key results for them to highlight here is that through using Plaid's transactions products, they were able to onboard around 500,000 members in just 5 months. Very impressive stuff.
Very cool, Richard. I want to highlight another example of a customer using transactions product, Bridget. Bridget is a company that helps user bridge money shocks. We have heard many a times users are smart and they just need to have access to tools that help them budget and manage short-term cash flow challenges. Bridget does just that. Bridget helps users avoid overdraft fees and predatory loan. When Bridget detects an upcoming bill and that users don't have enough money in their account to cover the upcoming expense, Bridget offers a no interest, no fee cash advance when users are in danger of overdrafting their account. These $100 to $250 no interest, no fee cash advance is very powerful to an end user when they're juggling to pay rent or buy grocery at the end of the month. With Plaid, Bridget helped the user save over $100 million in overdraft fee and predatory loan. On average, they also help consumers save about $500 annually in interest payment. Cherry on top, we've heard a testimonial from Bridget that we offer 20% coverage, better coverage than our competitor in transactions category. Next, Jimmy is going to talk about Lendingtree.
Yeah, finally, we have Lendingtree, which is an online loan marketplace. And what's really unique about this customer story is Lendingtree wanted to drive additional engagement with their users beyond just access to loans by helping them to really understand their savings and spending habits. And to do this, Plaid helps Lendingtree users to connect their financial accounts so they can access tools to help them make better financial decisions. And as a result of that, users who connect their accounts log on 60% more often and generates 3.7 times more revenue per month. This is a great example of how diversifying services using financial data can really lead to increased customer engagement. So you just heard about a few companies, what a few companies are doing with transaction data, but there's actually a lot more that can be done using other types of financial data. To build a comprehensive picture of someone's financial situation, you may want to know also about their investments and outstanding debt. And Plaid offers 2 additional products to access user permission, investment, and liabilities data, which can be used to offer even more services to help people grow their money over time or pay down their debt even faster. So we've covered a lot today, so let's wrap up a bit. Let's start with Royce, who will give you a preview of some of the work we've been doing and what's next for the Transactions API.
Great, thanks, Jimmy. Let's chat a little bit about what we have been up to and highlight upcoming focus area. Product quality is top of mind for us. Earlier this year, we focused on improving categorization quality and reconciliation. We've gotten a lot of feedback from our customer that helped us make improvement on the categorization front. We've made 3 significant improvements. First, we improved on how we identify credit cards payment. Next is payroll, which is becoming one of the most important insights in our categorization taxonomy. So we started working on better identifying income for gig workers. With this new update, we're able to accurately identify the income of gig workers like Uber drivers or DoorDash dashers. We've also heard from customers that getting better categorization of utilities is super important. We've added support to 400 plus regional utility providers such as First Energy and West Penn Power. On the reconciliation front, we know how important it is for you to have a complete view of the user transactions history. So we went ahead and looked at a number of our key integration and various data sources to reduce the instances of missing and duplicated transactions. On the international front, we've launched 2 new fields, authorized date time and date time. Rewards customers now have the ability to validate the time window of the purchase so they can reward their users accordingly. It's been a busy first quarter. Looking ahead, we have some exciting updates. We're looking to parse out additional insights that is useful for you. Some new fields that we are exploring includes third-party transfer, so things like PayPal, Venmo, or Zelle transaction, subscription indicator, as well as check number. Lastly, we're working on beefing up our machine learning capabilities. We are well on our way in building a transaction stream model that enable us to use context from the account entire history to provide even more context to an individual transactions. Next slide, please. So if you're still thinking about it, here's a couple reasons why you should consider building on Plaid's API. We're a company that is built by developers for developer. Our team is focused on maintaining a robust categorization and parsing engine so you can have access to high quality data. We also actively monitor and maintain high uptime. More importantly, our product is built with consumer control, security, and transparency in mind. Finally, we work with some of the largest financial institutions and fintech, so we look forward to having all of you come build with us. Next, Richard will take us into how you can get started.
Right, so you can get started with just 3 easy steps. First, sign up for API keys at the link provided here. You can then review our API documentation and play around in the sandbox. And lastly, you can hook up your development environments. So this does indeed work with real account data and credentials up to a max of 100. And once you're ready for prime time, you can request access for production. And that is it, 3 easy steps. Next slide. All right, thank you all for coming to this talk. We're gonna spend the last couple of minutes here for a Q&A. And just a reminder, please submit your questions in the Q&A widgets that you see in the screenshots. And we will have Jimmy read out questions that come in.
Great. First question will be for Royce. Would it be possible to go into a bit more detail about how you collect customer feedback regarding accuracy of categorization and merchant parsing?
Yeah, for sure. As Richard had mentioned in one of his slides earlier, that we use our customer feedback kind of process to improve our categorization accuracy. So we have built a pretty robust system here. We would hear from our customer through support ticket or from outreach to customer. And when a customer have identified an instance of incorrect categorization for us, we will review it in across a little bit more data there to make sure that this is actually something that we should add. And then we would curate a manual rule to fix this categorization bug and make it better for everyone. So I think one of the most powerful things of building on top of Plaid is that we have heard a lot of customer feedback. And once we make it better, we make it better and available for everyone else too.
Great. Richard, a few questions coming in about merchants. Do you provide a unique identifier for merchants? How accurate is your merchant classification? And what % of your transactions are assigned to a merchant?
Ooh, okay. So right now we do not have a unique identifier for merchants, unfortunately. That is something that is definitely being explored for the future. How accurate we are for merchant classification, it really depends. This is one of those things where, depending on the population of the user base that you are serving, depending on the distribution of categories, et cetera, it could vary a lot. Generally, we see roughly 85 to 95% accuracy for those. And I believe the last question was around what % of transactions have a merchant. So again, this kind of depends on the distribution of the type of transactions, but for ourselves, we target a recall rate of 95% when parsing out a merchant name. So, in nearly all cases, when there is a merchant present in the description itself, we will have it parsed out.
Cool. A few additional questions are coming in regarding categorization. Royce, how large is our category taxonomy? Is this a fixed list or does it grow over time? And can transactions have more than one category assigned to it?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So our categorization taxonomy is about 600 right now. It is a fixed list, but we do have the ability to add it. But if we add a new category, we will provide you with sufficient time so you have plenty of notification. In terms of if the transactions have one category or more than one category, at this point, one transaction would have only one category returned to it.
Great. Richard, is transactions supported in every country?
So transactions is supported in every country that Plaid is in. You can check that out on our website, but yes, as long as Plaid works there, we are supported there.
Great. Royce, to which extent could you alias the naming conventions for some of those values? For example, could your alias in store to card present?
Sorry, I don't think we do this at this point.
Okay. Let's keep the questions coming in. We're slowly gonna just try to get to as many as we can. Richard, do you have any integrations with banking core providers such as Jack Henry, FIS, or Fiserv? These are community and regional banks. If not, any plans in the future?
Yes, so we do indeed integrate with a lot of these core providers, such as Jack Henry. So yes, they do support a lot of community and regional banks. So yes, all of those banks should be supported and are included in the 10,000 plus banks that we support in the US.
Great. Royce, do you map transactions that are associated with each other? For example, if there is a refund, would it have transaction ID of the corresponding purchase?
Yeah, for the refund, it's an interesting use case. So we don't have a transaction ID to the corresponding purchase item, but we do categorize the refund item based on the item that it was purchased as. So for example, if you buy something from Starbucks and return it later, unlikely, but we would categorize both of them as coffee shop.
Richard, what transaction metadata do you receive from banks in addition to the merchant description field?
Yes. So the unsatisfactory answer here is going to be that it depends a lot on the bank. So each bank returns very different types of metadata. As I mentioned, some do return a parsed out merchant name, and some banks are more accurate with that than others. I'm sure you've all seen your own bank statements. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not very good at parsing out the name. Sometimes we do get things like the exact date, time of the transaction. Sometimes we do get, like information about was Apple Pay used, things like that. And we do get categories. So the big problem there and the big challenge for us is that it really depends on the bank. The vast majority of the banks we support do not return most of these pieces of information. And even for the ones that do, we have to go through and check the quality and really feed that into our system and then of course the last piece is standardized, right? Because each bank kind of has their own system for how they standardize merchants, like the taxonomy of categories that they use, et cetera. So yeah, but both spotty data and standardization are things that we really wrestle with a lot.
One question is, are you doing any credit scoring as an insight on the data for your customers? I think this is a popular request that we hear from a lot of different types of developers, lenders as well. There's obviously a lot of insight that can be inferred from transaction data, but at the moment we are not focusing on a specific credit scoring feature, but we always welcome any feedback from developers and customers on additional features or improvements to the transaction product, or any other Plaid product that we support today. So definitely feel free to reach out to us on Twitter with any ideas or any feedback on what you want to see us focus on next to build. Then there's one, can transaction data be used to provide fraud risk scores in real time for retail consumers to merchant transactions? Richard or Royce, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, so I think so. It is not something that our team is working on right now, but certainly I think a valid use case.
Cool. Royce, when I get transactions from Sandbox or development environment, I can get only date, year, month, day from date field. Do you provide transaction time, hour, minute, or second?
Yeah, I think this is something that we are starting to explore a little bit more. We have offered a timestamp field in Europe already, the 2 new fields that we've mentioned that we've launched earlier this year. In the US, it's a little sparse from our banking provider, but we're going to explore this a little bit more in the future as well.
One more question for Richard. If you are a data service provider for Jack Henry Banks, what is the best process to implement Plaid transactions to get access to the data? Would this still require ODI 'through Jack Henry request per bank?
I am not sure about the answer to this question. I think this might be something that we would have to get back to you on.
Cool. Royce, like when customers have issues that come up with transaction categorization or parsing, like can they reach out to Plaid to kind of like resolve some of that?
Yeah, for sure. You can reach out to Plaid through your support team. You can write to us and file a support ticket. We look at these tickets very actively and make sure that we maintain a high quality product for you. We also have a email alias that we share with our customers, so you can write directly into our product and engineering team that we actively monitor as well.
Great. Richard, how long does it take to retrieve the latest transaction data from like financial institutions? What would you recommend to reduce this time in order to improve the UX for the end user?
Yes. So again, the answer here depends on the bank. Generally, for the majority of the large banks, we typically are able to get updated data about 4 to 6 times a day. Again, that's very rough depending on the bank. In terms of like when that data would be available, like on our side, it is very fast to process, on the order of seconds for transactions. And of course, we do have a webhook system that will notify, assuming that you subscribe to it, that will notify you of any updated transactions. So how would we recommend reducing this time? Yeah, so this is honestly one of the biggest problems that we are tackling as Plaid, to try and get data to be as fresh as possible. So this involves working directly with a lot of these banks and financial institutions, just to be able to get more updated data. So yeah, we have a large team dedicated to really just this problem, and it is something that we are confident that will get better and better over time.
Royce, for various institutions, are you doing anything to kind of help developers better understand data freshness for those institutions for the transactions product?
Yeah, we've heard from many of our customers that data freshness is top of mind also. So to provide you guys a little bit more transparency on how fresh your transactions data is, we're working with the developer experience team here at Plaid to surface these institution status a little bit more broadly. So you can have a better insight on how fresh the transactions are updated on the banking provider side.
Richard, if a developer wanted to see our full category list taxonomy, how would they get a hold of that list?
Yes, so we do have an endpoint that makes this available. It's categories gets. You can find more information on our API documentation.
In terms of pricing, how does pricing works for Plaid transactions product or other products? You actually visit plaid.com, and we can also, there's a general overview of the different tiers that you can get started with Plaid. Also, when you sign up for API keys, there's more pricing information available in the dashboard today. I think that is all the time we have for Q&A today. I want to thank everyone again for tuning in to today's Tech Talk. As a reminder, we'll be emailing you with a recording of the Tech Talk. But in the meantime, follow us on Twitter and YouTube, and check out plaid.com for more information. Have a great day, everyone.